And welcome, Pitt fans. Another edition of Pitt Panther Talk. Mike Vakofkian, along with Harry Paceres. Harry, it's been too long. We
Yes.
we've had we did this a month or so ago, and we need to make this more frequent. And with National Letter of Intent next Wednesday, we'll definitely do it. But I apologize for the Pitt fans missing you on the tube here.
No, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. Pitt, the football season wrapped up last night. Impressive. I don't know how to put last night. They won last night. It was good. I think they dominated more than the score indicated, but they won 6-5 on the season. We're going to make this segment of Pitt Panther Talk sort of a look back and also look ahead. We're not going to focus too much on the game last night, but Pitt finished 6-5. We know the expectations coming into the season were a little bit more than that. Things happened, a couple games that probably got away from them. When you look back, how would you describe the 6-5 season? What word would you use to maybe describe it?
I'll use two. Somewhat disappointing, but the caveat has to be there. And I know fans don't want to hear this, but this was the COVID year. This was an exceptionally bizarre year in general. You didn't know what players were going to be available ahead of time. But overall, look, we know what the expectation was. There's no use in trying to clean it up. I mean, it was a bit of a disappointment. But you did go into games at times. I mean, especially towards the end of the season, you're missing 3 starting linemen on the offensive line, and going into Clemson, it's not a good scenario. So, you start the season off stout defense, but you're losing Twyman, you're losing Mathis. But I think overall, I mean, you look back at the schedule, there were 2 very winnable games, and one being BC and the other being NC State. And for those Pitt fans that think the NC State game was painful, I was in a bed in the hospital with COVID when it was going on, trying to watch it. But what I will say about this season was the success the Panthers had was directly predicated on their offensive output. And in the games where they sputtered, you had the defense, despite the fact the majority of the season, the defense was stout. But they did wear out when there was little to no offensive output. And they really struggled offensively in the red zone. And it came back to bite them. Now, there were 2 games in particular, Notre Dame and Clemson. It is what it is. They were better teams than Pitt. I still think Pitt could have been far more competitive in both of those games with a higher offensive output. But again, they struggled. The defense was forced to stay out in the field a lot longer. It wore them down, and it led to an ugly outcome. So despite all this, I mean, look at Michigan. Harbaugh is going to get an extension, and they had a much worse season than Pitt. And I think a lot of the coaches now are going to get the COVID pass, and I think that will apply to Coach Narduzzi. I mean, it wasn't a horrible season, but they definitely underproduced compared to what most were predicting.
Yeah, the one game that was a killer, and I think it changed a lot. Was the first loss to NC State when their offense gave them the lead with a minute and change left, and all they needed to do was make one stop. They still had their defense intact, and you couldn't stop NC State's offense from scoring with a minute left, and they had to drive the field 85 yards. That right there. And there's one game that I look back at that really was disappointing. It was that. But you brought up Pat Narduzzi. I have no doubt, unless there's some sort of major conflict between him and the administration, he will be back this season. However, those are two. I think those are 2 separate. There's 2 different things here. I think he'll be back, but he's going to be entering year 6 now. 6-win season. Not a great year last year either. Do you still have faith in Pat Narduzzi?
Yes. But again, let me preface my answer. when you look at the totality of the program and you look what they're asking from a head coach, and I'll get into my frustration. He runs, first of all, a clean program. You don't find Pitt Panthers, the football players, on the front page of the newspaper for malfeasance. And let's face it, that was the issue that Coach Wanstead had that may have led to his demise. He graduates players at a high rate, which is very admirable. He generates some solid NFL prospects. And the last thing, and the most important thing, and I think the reason there's a little more faith or optimism heading forward. I know some of the fans don't want to hear this, but really starting from 2019 to the recruiting class of 2020 to the current recruiting class, each one has improved exponentially. And when you look at what's there and what can occur in the future, Pitt can be as competitive or win championships. But then comes the ultimate factor, wins and losses. And there's where the frustration lies. And I'm going to go back. And if you go back, I think it was 2017 when we had Matt Canada. Matt Canada was our most innovative offensive coordinator, worked with the personnel we had. Now, we did have a great crop of seniors, but that was his most successful year, and we won the Coastal. He sputtered since then picking coordinators, and Mark Whipple frustrated me quite a bit this season and was mediocre at best, at times awful, and very conservative. So the pieces are all there. He's doing everything asked of a head coach, but he's not producing at a high level, I think, like a lot of the fans would hope. And that's putting it mildly. I mean, I hear it from all ends. I mean, there's big Pat Narduzzi supporters, and I hear from the detractors every single day, and I get both sides of it. So next year is going to be a really critical year. I don't think Pitt's going to take this significant step back. I hear people go, they're going to win 3 or 4 games. I'm not sure about that yet. I think there's enough talent coming back. It's going to be younger. But do I have faith in him? Yeah, I do. I still think Pat's a great fit for the program, fit for the culture. He's created a great culture. He's got to start producing at a higher level, a more consistent level. And I'm talking maybe 8-9 win seasons here or there. That's what fans are looking for.
Since you brought him up, Mark Whipple, I think that's what people are, now that the season is over with. We got national letter of intent. The first one next Wednesday. I get these questions all the time, and I don't know how to answer them as far as which assistants. Are there any assistants that potentially are in trouble? I don't see anything on defense. Obviously, I think those guys are all back if they want to, provided, maybe they don't get a better opportunity elsewhere, like a D coordinator's job or something like, who knows? I haven't heard that. I'm just saying, other than that, I see all those guys coming back. Offense is where you could, you can make the argument. As I've stated plenty of times, I think they need to move on for Mark Whipple. I just don't think, I don't like the continual changes in coordinators, but you can't just keep doing something that isn't working. And in 2 years here, I don't believe they're a better offense with Mark Whipple as the coordinator. I think their running game has suffered. I don't think it's any coincidence since he's been here. Passing numbers might be up in some areas, but I think that's only because of the volume in which they're passing the ball. So it's easier to be better at yards per game when you're throwing the ball 50 times a game. What are your feelings on Mark Whipple? Do you believe he should be back? Do you believe that Pat Narduzzi, who has a tendency to be loyal to his people, do you believe he will give him an extension? Because Whipple's contract, they wouldn't have to fire him. They would just not renew his contract. How do you believe that's going to fall?
Correct. And he's on a 2-year contract.
Motion detected.
I personally believe that he's probably out the door. I think it's time for possibly younger blood, someone more innovative. He was only on a 2-year contract. This isn't a firing. It's a handshake. Thank you for your service, and you're out the door. So if there's candidate number 1 to possibly be replaced, I feel strongly that it's Mark Whipple. Some people are brought up Dave Borbley, the offensive line coach. The line the last few games is blocked better, and at times it was one of these interesting season. At times they block completely, at other times they struggled. He's potentially on the chopping block, and I'll say the same thing. Maybe it's time for young blood to be brought into that position. The third name that's thrown out there, and it's an interesting name, but I don't think it'll happen. A lot of people rip Tim Salem, and I understand. Tight end has not been a strong suit for Pitt for quite some time. But what fans don't understand is his nickname is Turbo Tim. He's an exceptional recruiter. You look at last night, blew me away. Matt Gonzalez you could argue he's our best offensive lineman right now. It's someone he brought in. Izzy was the Gatorade Player of the Year in New York. Someone Salem brought in. AJ Roberts, Serbasier Dennis. He is a relentless recruiter that's respected in the Northeast in particular. When I call those coaches in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. So I think he's fine. Plus, he's bringing in Bartholomew and Renda. You're bringing in some fresh blood at the tight end position just to see how that pans out. And Krull, I believe, will be coming back as well. So, in particular, for looking at two coaches that might on the chopping block, I think Whipple's the most probable. Borbley, 50-50.
Yeah, a couple things just to touch upon, just to further what you said. I agree. The offensive line, it's weird. The three young guys got a chance because of the veterans missing games because of COVID. And I think arguably two of the last three games, and obviously the one that they didn't perform that well in, you're going against Clemson. So that should be noted. But I thought the line with the new blood looked really good. And the question I bring up then is, why didn't we see these guys earlier? But I think that's a different topic.
But what you said is correct, and fans need to go back and look. There is a tremendous amount of young offensive line talent. And if you look at this class of 2021, you could easily argue this might be the best offensive line class Pat Narduzzi has signed. We're talking about a big group, talented group. The large majority had 20 plus P5 offers. There's a lot of tremendous talent coming up. So it wouldn't shock me if Borbley's kept. And, like I said, I think it's a 50-50 proposition at this point.
One thing I hope doesn't happen is I've seen a couple Pitt fans remark on this, and I've seen it happen before in other situations. I hope last night's performance by the offensive line and the running game doesn't give. I want to say this too. I have nothing personal against Mark Whipple. When we say a guy maybe should move on, this is not, and I realize it's a person's livelihood and all that, but we're just talking football here. So this is
right.
Nothing personal against Mark Whipple. But I just hope last night's success of the running game doesn't cloud any opinions that Narduzzi and Heather Lyke might have had about what they wanted to do. Saying, well, maybe things are on track. You don't think that could one game is not gonna change anyone's opinion? Do you agree with that, or maybe it could?
I know. No, I agree. Let me say this. First of all, we played Georgia Tech, and I know they were at home. Georgia Tech has been soft on defense all season. Second of all, they had a very, very violent game. I watched it last week against NC State. I mean, it was a physical brawl that they went through. So lastly, quite frankly, Pitt was better on both sides of the line. Pitt was not only better, but they were far more physical. In fact, a colleague of mine messaged me that's a Georgia Tech alum and was, wow, because it's the first time I watched Pitt. We're getting dominated on both sides. So I don't want to take away anything from a brilliant offensive line performance. They were opening huge holes for Vincent Davis. Vincent Davis admirably found them, racked up a ton of yards. And at times there wasn't a hole there, and somehow he squeaked through. I mean, there was one situation, it was 3rd and 8 by our goal. He cracked off the 30-plus yard run. I was astonished. So bottom line, we were a better team with a better line that played a weaker team with lesser talent. So, no, I don't think they're going to look a Whipple and judge it on that one game.
All right, now the big $1 million question going into the offseason. Kenny Pickett, he had a hell of a career here with Pitt. He came in, I don't think he got a lot of notoriety. I remember us interviewing, I remember being at the South Side when him and his father came to visit. You talked to him when he decommitted from Temple. Great situation. He's a kid that when you talk about improving every year, I think he's done that despite the adversity he's had to face regarding his change in offensive coordinator seemingly every year. But looking ahead, they got to replace him. And we saw what happened in the 2 games, Miami, and there was another game that Notre Dame that we didn't have Kenny Pickett, and results weren't so good. We have Davis Bevel, Joey Yellen, and possibly Nick Patty coming in. Some fans have brought up grad transfer and all that. How do you break down the quarterback race for next year? And is it all going to be judged by spring? Could you make any determinations on anything you saw this year?
Yeah, I have strong opinions on this. I've been shocked at the fan base, many of which have messaged me and said, we need a clean house at quarterback. First of all, a year ago, to Whipple's credit, he brought in Joey Yellen that was a 4-star, many, many accolades out of high school. Fans were going nuts, and they were all excited.
Yeah.
In addition to that, we have Davis Bevel, 6'5", 4-star mobile quarterback with a rocket arm. Nick Patty came from one of the best high school programs out of Jersey, and he does have some experience. I refuse to judge any of them unless I see more playing time. I'm in the martial arts. I've been doing it 20 years. I was once a white belt. I'm now 3rd-degree black belt. When I was first doing the block as a white belt, I needed to think it through, and I was slow. When you get to the level I'm at now, it's a lot faster. These guys need playing time. So the whole concept of clearing house and maybe bringing in a transfer to start, look, I think there's a chance they are. I noticed they're tracking about 3 grad transfers now. It would be a live arm. It would be an experienced arm. But I'm of the opinion that COVID probably slowed down their progression. They weren't able to practice as much. To your point, Mike, let spring ball happen. Let these guys compete. Mm-hmm. Let the best man win. We're not bereft of talent at this position. Yellen was a 4-star for a reason, as was Bevel. And we've seen what Nick Patty can do. He's not a bad quarterback. So I don't think we're bereft of talent. I think they need more time in the system, and they need more playing time. More playing time often leads to success. So will we bring in a grad transfer? Possibly. And it's important to know, too, we have, Nate Yarnell coming in the 21 class. He's going to be a freshman. He's going to need time, but he's coming out of a massive football factory out of Texas. So, I think fans need to exhale a little bit. Change happens. And I think we just need to go through a natural attrition of spring ball and then going from there and seeing who leads the pack. And I'm willing to go with any of the QBs we have right now.
Yep, I agree. And the other thing you got to take into account, too, is these guys could use a whole offseason of getting the reps. I don't know how many reps they get with Kenny Pickett there is with the players. And the one benefit they are going to have is they're going to be able to – it's not as though they're going to be coming in and asking to do everything themselves. They're going to have a heck of a wide receiver depth chart throwing to, which will be a help to the quarterback, and hopefully Lucas Crawl returns next season. And, you could have some pieces. So there's parts around them now. I agree. I'm just not in favor of the grad transfer. I think that's just a Band-Aid. You had faith in these guys when you wanted to sign them. It's their turn. Let's see what they can do.
And when you think about the movie Groundhog Day, we had this last year.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted one. Yellen came in. People were just jumping up and down. And now I hear basically they want to reset and do the same. No, I forget that. You cultivate the talent you have. You have 2 4-stars sitting there. You have Nick Patty. You have a great quarterback coming in the current class. Just go with what you got.
All right, let's look ahead. A couple more topics here with Harry Pissarris. I'm Mike Vakovkan, another edition of Pitt Panther Talk. Net, now that the season's over with, the Pitt coaches, we'll see what happens with a bowl game, but they're going to, for the immediate, for the next week or so, they're going to be recruiting, making sure they keep all their 2021 commits, also look ahead to 2022. As far as 21, it appears as though everyone is set. Everyone's set to go. The one guy that's out there, and he's a big fish, Khalil Anderson out of Georgia. I had a feeling this was going to happen right after Pitt not signed him, but he committed to Pitt. He started racking in all those SEC offers. And now this week, he received another one from Penn State. They want him. We'll see who else offers him. The bad thing for Pitt is he's told me, unless something has changed here, he doesn't want to sign until February, which if Pitt's going to get him, it's going to be a long 3 months as far as looking on Twitter to see what other offers the kid receives. What's your read on him, and should they be worried? I think yes.
No, I agree. And what the fans need to know is they knew ahead of time, they knew the day he committed that this possibility might occur. He's an exceptionally talented player out of the Atlanta area. The fact that he's not going to sign next week, usually, look, it is what it is. It's indicative of a bad sign. There's a lot of schools going after him. They're going to fight. If you know this staff, they're going to be relentless trying to keep him. But if he bolts, DB's an area that's left. And I will tell you, I'm having an issue. I gotta reach out to my contacts because with the COVID numbers, is what I'm calling, with some of the players coming back, I'm not exactly sure how many scholarships they have left. I think DB's a place that they want to add, maybe one or two. So that's going to factor into the numbers if Anderson bolts. But to your point, Mike, I think it's going to be very difficult to hold on to them. The plus side in this class, and I mentioned it before, the defensive line class is ridiculous, especially after the last edition here of Naquan Brown. I think it's one of the, if not the best offensive line class signed in terms of numbers plus talent in the Narduzzi area, and the running back class as well. You can't ignore. And I think Malik Newton is going to be the hammer that a lot of fans have been looking for. So, like I said, I need to take a look at the numbers to get a better feel. It wouldn't shock me if we had another linebacker. We definitely need some DBs. There's still some room to add some players, but this is an exceptional class for Pat Narduzzi. But Anderson's a big one, and that's going to be a fight to the very end.
Yeah, the two things I think they have going for them is the relationship that he was able to build with Archie Collins. I think it's very strong. Archie continues to recruit him. And the other thing is, I think some of these recruits saw the way that Pitt was able to use their true freshmen this year, and they got them on the field. It wasn't talk. It wasn't, yeah, you'll play. You know, there's tape, there's numbers that they can show players. And if you had to ask me which, and this is just right off the top of my head, which two players in this 21 class could possibly make an impact next year on the field, considering all the talent that's returning, I would say Nakai Johnson from West Mifflin and Khalil Anderson would be the second one. And I think the Pitt coaches can sell him on the fact that we're losing a lot in the secondary next year. If you do what you have to do, there's no reason you can't be the Jordan Addison of the 21 class as far as getting on the field and making an immediate impact.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, in this class, he's top 3, top 5 at worst. And to your point, you know, you're looking at a refurbished secondary. I think playing time is going to be wide open, and this is an exceptionally talented young man. So I've been asked this multiple times, and I've said Anderson's one of the top 3 or 4 players I thought that could easily see the field.
All right, last question, Harry, is this happens all the time. This doesn't happen with Pitt. So kids decommit, especially with what's going on. Earlier in the week, the big story that's kind of got pushed back a little bit is a linebacker, middle linebacker. I think you and I both liked. We thought he was explosive. Deveron Maxwell Black out of Florida. There was a parting of the ways, and I don't. The reason I say that is the reality is we don't know if he chose to break it off or if the Pitt coaches, which happens with all programs, so we want to make that clear. They kind of let the kid know that it might, your future might be better elsewhere. I don't know which way that went, but he decided to decommit. Thoughts on that?
This was a mutual, and this is from 3 sources, a mutual parting of ways. This is after evaluating his senior season as well. The kid hit like a brick. I mean, he was a big hitter, but he was undersized. And I just think there were a lot of factors that went into that. And lastly, if they were wavering on this guy, which I think they were by midseason, they are on a roll right now in recruiting. They've added some exceptional talent to this class. Quite frankly, if you're fishing, I think they can get some bigger fish. So it opens up a scholarship here to close some players either by next week or February. So this was just this wasn't a decommit. This was a mutual handshake, parting of ways. I wish him well. I'm sure he's going to help a program somewhere, but it won't be at Pitt.
All right, Harry. Appreciate it. Let's make sure we catch up next week. Maybe
Absolutely
around signing day. We'll get your thoughts on any new news and maybe just evaluate. We'll look at maybe get you to grade some of your favorite members of Pitt's class of 21 when it happens next Wednesday.
Will do. I think it'd be great. Until then, everyone stay safe, and I look forward to our next edition of doing this.
All right. For Harry Paceris, I'm Mike Vikovcan for another edition of Pitt Panther Talk. Thanks, everyone.